At Tabor City Home here. And today we are putting down grass. We completely fragged this yard. So if you look at the previous videos on box blading the yard and getting it ready for this. Background, we had to dig a trench through here to put a new main drain pipe in. Completely fragged my yard. And all my neighbors know I take a tremendous amount of pride in my yard. Before they even knew my real name, they called me the the yard work guy. So we're going to show you a little bit about this. So the spreader we're using today is a Turf Builder edgeguard mini. We're actually going to do a mix of grass. We're going to do a mix. We got this contractor's mix here. I looked up some videos on YouTube. And the contractor's mix, actually there's a lot of people who say that this came out for them somewhere around a week, at the most 2 weeks. So I'm figuring 9 to 14 days this should be up. When it comes to this centipede mix here, this Tiff Blair, I have no idea really what that means, but there's a lot of people who are really high on it, and you know, that's I don't know. This was the same cost as the one that didn't have it, so I just got this one. But ultimately I want centipede. I'm using the contractor's mix for stability and to give it maybe grow in front of this and give it a little bit of shade. My hope is that ultimately the centipede will take over the entire yard. The house I had before this house, actually 2 houses before this house, had a Bermuda yard, and the Bermuda yard that I had was sitting next to my neighbor's yard that was a centipede, and his centipede completely dominated my Bermuda. I mean, it got in there and just went right after my yard, and it was pretty awesome thing to see. So the thing about this mix is the Pennington, if you go on here and look, it'll tell you what rate you need to spread it at. So we look at the English version. So we're using a Scott's Turf Builder edgeguard mini spreader. If we're overseeding, which we're not, because you know we're not spreading it over old grass, we're actually putting in all new grass, we would use a 7. Here we're going to use an 8. So we come down to our dial spreader. We have our dial spreader set at 8. I've already put the contractor mix seed in here. So we're going to go through and give this thing a good mix. Now the brown stuff you see in here is actually a kind of a mulch. And what the mulch does with the centipede seed is it's supposed to provide some stability to the soil and hold it in place. So this yard is already pretty well prepped. We're going to go ahead and do some spreading, and then we're going to take a garden rake and rake it in. Grass seed, a couple things. Grass seed should, number one, should be about a 1/4 inch deep, and I mean we're talking about a 1/4 inch deep. So we're just going to go ahead and put this stuff in with the spreader, rake it in with a garden rake. That'll also help us. I mean, the yard's pretty well level, but that'll help us finish out leveling out the yard. And then we're going to set up some sprinklers. Now, the most important thing, once you get the grass seed in there, which is an investment, you're spending money, you know. Once you get the grass seed in there, where most grass seed fails is people forget to water it. You got to water it. So we got a automatic timer that we're going to put on the spigot over here. We're going to set up a series of sprinkler heads, and we're going to set this thing to water for a half hour 2 times a day, probably 6 a.m. 6 p.m. And then, you know, we're going to give it about 30 days. And I put a picture of this on Facebook yesterday. I had one of my coworkers call me and say, yeah, way to get out of mowing your yard for the couple of weeks. Yeah, really? Yeah. So but we're going to get this thing down, and hopefully we'll have a nice green grass by 4th of July. That's what we're aiming for, 4th of July. All right? So, here we go. Okay, so one of the things you have to remember about spreading seed with a spreader, whether it's seed, fertilizer, whatever, you should be tracking about 3 miles an hour pace. That's going to properly throw the seed. Generally in the fall or the spring when I put down fertilizer, I have a hard time kind of telling exactly where the fertilizer goes. With this yard being as brown as it is and all that seed being coated in green, this is actually fairly easy. Alright, so we're going to continue doing this. We'll bring you back when we get to the part where we're raking it in. Alright?